Welcome to the show. My name's Frank. I'm from Custom Life.
You're from Custom Life?
I am Custom
You are
Life.
Custom Life.
I am Custom Life.
You are,
Okay.
and I'm Brian, and I am Grinder TV.
All right, cool. All right, so what are we talking about today? Dude, we're making really good progress. This is our 5th episode.
Yeah,
And we're just chugging along. I think we're doing really good so far.
I think so too. I'm actually having a lot of fun with it.
Absolutely. We just got these new mics. We got these little Rode mini mics, so that kind of like makes us, a little bit better, I guess. And you got the arm. I don't have the arm yet. My arm is sitting at the post office waiting to be picked up. But
Yeah.
I think we're progressively getting better.
Now that's a relative term, because does the gear make you better?
And that is today's topic. Today we're talking about gear. We're talking about how we use it, not how to use it, just how we use it, and how we apply it to what we do.
Yeah.
And that was a great segue. These brand new microphones. I got everything set up on my computer now, so now I can see you. I can see the mic recording. I can see my camera recording. I'm not doing a lot of messing around with the camera over there. That's what I'm saying. That's what I mean by we're doing better. I'm doing better.
You're doing better.
Yeah, I'm doing better. How are you doing?
I'm like not ready for this podcast. I kind of woke up late and just didn't do anything, and then just went straight into this.
Yeah, I know. I don't really have much notes for this week's episode either. So I guess it's going to just be a lot of winging it.
A lot of winging it. I know. My notepad's way over here, and it just has contacts for the Avi.
Oh, that's
Hotel
cool.
and Casino.
Oh, do you want to...
No.
Okay.
All right.
No,
So,
we're not talking about that right now.
we're talking about gear.
We're talking about gear. I
Now-
think... Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no. You go right ahead.
Oh, thank you. So, gear. Every time someone asks me about gear, because like a lot of people ask this, I'm sure people ask you the same thing. I get messages all the time like, what do I need to start making videos? And I thought about this. I've been thinking about this for a couple days, and I came up with this thing, and someone's already probably said this before, but we always say gear doesn't matter. You should just start with whatever gear you have, and gear is a relative term by itself, because gear could just be the cell phone that you have in your pocket. There's tons and tons and tons of people out there creating content and creating successful content just using that right there. So that's like kind of like the basis of gear doesn't matter. But then I saw, I was through a forum or something like that. I saw someone talking about, well, a lot of people who say that the gear doesn't matter are filming on very expensive cameras using very expensive microphones telling you gear doesn't matter. And I thought about that and I was like, okay, I think I can put it into perspective kind of. It shouldn't say gear doesn't matter. The full thing, the whole phrase should be gear doesn't matter until it does.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And that means, and from my perspective, that means starting with something very basic, whatever you can get your hands on to start creating content. And then once you start creating content, you'll find yourself saying like, oh, this is great, but I wish I could just do this. And then you figure out, Then you figure out, what's the next piece of gear that I can get that can achieve the thing that I want to do? And that's how I think you start. I think that's where it fits in, that gear doesn't matter until it does.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was thinking about this last night a little bit, and we always say gear doesn't matter, and it's true, like you said, until it does matter, and then it really matters.
That's right. Yeah. Because once it starts mattering, then you start going down these like rabbit holes, which we've done.
And I'll give us a very simple example is this podcast. If you look at like a professional podcast, they have producers. So they have sound people monitoring the sound. They've got people monitoring the audio. They've got people looking up information as the hosts are talking about it, et cetera, right? Very expensive microphones and blah, 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 blah. And that relates to like what we do in the video world, because we are just one person. So we are the host, we are the producer, we are the audio guy. And in the video world, we are the director, the producer, the video camera operator, the audio person, like wherever, and the editor. You know what I mean? So it's just one of us. So what I'm saying with this setup that I have now and that you have now is you don't need this to start a podcast.
Right.
Right? Like, so when we did our very first episode, we had the microphones that we already had, and the cameras that we already had and the equipment that we already had. And so essentially, the most important thing to starting a podcast is the audio quality, right? And the content, of course. So as long as you have a microphone, you don't need to go out and buy another microphone. You can utilize what you have and then build upon that. And that's the same with the video stuff. If you have a phone, and any modern cell phone will record higher quality video than cameras of 10 years ago or,
Yeah.
15 years ago. So
on one of the trips, we were out and about, and it was when we were in Nashville, and you're like, I'm just going to use my phone. And you took a couple shots with it, and you put them in the video, and I mean, they look great. You cannot tell the difference.
You can if you really sit there and look at it, but to the average eyeballs, if you're just inserting quick stuff, you know what I mean? It's totally fine. And the most important thing too when it comes to video stuff is the story.
Right. That was going to be one of my points.
Yeah, and it also depends on what you like you said, I get asked and you get asked quite a bit of, hey, I want to start doing what you guys do, or I want to start recording stuff and put it on YouTube or put it on Instagram or wherever you're going to put it, what should I buy? Mm-hmm. So when people ask me, hey, I want to start making YouTube videos, or I want to start filming car shows, or I want to start whatever it is that involves camera equipment, I always ask them, well, what kind of phone do you have? And they say, I have iPhone or Samsung, whatever. And I say, well, depending on it depends on what you want to do, depending on the gear you need. If you just want to walk around a car show and walking around, like you just want to literally walk around and put that on YouTube, then use your phone. Mm-hmm. There's, if you want to start to get into more cinematic things where you need the background to be more blurry and you want to get more detailed shots, then you're going to need a camera where you can interchange the lenses. You can't utilize your phone or a GoPro and get shots where you're standing back and you're zoomed in on something and you're trying to isolate that subject. So that's when you start to need a camera. And then I also thought about this too, is you can go and buy a cheap camera, like you can find a used camera, but you gotta like think about, if you're already in the market for, like, say, a DSLR mirrorless camera where you can interchange the lenses, if you can find a used camera for, I don't know, say $750, and it only shoots 1080p, but then there's a camera that's $1,200 and it shoots 4K. If you're already in the market for a camera, then you already kind of know that you're going to do this for a little while.
Right.
You want to spend the extra money to be ahead of the game, as long as that extra money as long as you can afford it. You don't just want to buy a very cheap camera and then limit yourself, and then in 5 months or 4 months from now be like, I should have just spent the extra money.
Right.
Because
And I think the beginning to all of this conversation is kind of like a two thing. One is, you're right. You don't want to start getting wrapped up in expensive gear if you get into it and you find out, like, maybe this really isn't my thing. Maybe this isn't what I wanted to do. That's why you should utilize the most basic things that you have available to you to at least give it a try to see if you want to do it. And then you can start, progressing, learning more, and like learning about gear and like getting better and getting better things. And to kind of go back to the whole cell phone thing and like, using that to begin with, and you were talking about how later on you're going to get into this gear about like, interchangeable lenses and, more expensive camera bodies and stuff like that. It kind of refers back to a conversation that we had before, and my thing that I refer back to a lot to kind of like align my my creative drive, and that's that video, The Gap. And I'll talk about this a lot just because I really like that video and it really applies a lot to it. But that's The Gap. So like, if you were a regular person and you're like, I want to go to car shows and I want to start producing content, you pull out your phone, you start producing content, and you get it going, you put it out there, and you're like, you know what good videos look like. You watch good videos every single day. But the videos that you're putting out aren't those yet. That's the gap. So like now what you have to do is you have to pursue it not only, with a motivational drive, but with a, hardware drive, which is like the gear and stuff like that. And so you're constantly trying to close that gap. So you're starting with your cell phone and creating content, and then you're like, okay, well that was really really good, but I know it could be better because I watch these guys' videos and they look a certain way, and I want to achieve that. So you start doing research on it. How do I achieve that look? And then you start realizing, okay, well now I'm going to graduate into this next piece of equipment. And it's just, to me, it's just a natural progression through that. And that's actually, from my experience, that's how it went. I started. I didn't start with my phone because when I started doing it, when you started doing it, phones did not have the capabilities they had today.
No, not at all.
So I had to go out and buy a camera, but I bought the cheapest camera. I started out with my photography camera was a Canon Rebel XS, which actually didn't even shoot video. That was at the time when I was just doing photos and stuff like that. So I got that camera.
There's a huge difference between videos and photos too when it comes to gear. So if you're talking about just shooting photos, then every camera is exactly the same. All settings, whether it's a $300 DSLR, mirrorless, however you want to put it, up to a $8,000 body, they are the same. The settings are not different. You know what I mean? The quality of the photos are different, obviously, but when it comes to photography and videos are two totally different things.
Right.
So it depends on where you want to be. If you're a photographer and you're only doing photos, then almost all cameras nowadays will also shoot good quality video. But if you want to do videos and not really a lot of photography, it's kind of the same thing. But it is very important to differentiate what you want to do.
Right.
And what we're talking about. So if it's just photos, then a $300, $400 camera is fine. But if you want to also do videos, then that is not the case.
Right. Well, I was talking more from my perspective of like my progress through getting to where I am today. So yeah, in the beginning, I actually really didn't even think about shooting video. When I purchased that first camera and it didn't shoot video, I was only there to shoot car show coverage and put those photos up online. But again, it's that creative progression. So then once I was doing that for a long time and realized, how not necessarily important video is, but how it is another aspect to what we do, to add another kind of like tool in the tool belt kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I went from that XS, and my first camera that shot video, I was going with a Canon T3i, Canon T3i. Mm-hmm. Which is funny because even way back in the early Grinder days, you were shooting with a T2i, weren't you? Way back in the day?
Yeah, so my very first camera was a Canon T2i, and that was a revolutionary camera back then because the Canon 5D Mark II, which was one of Canon's full frame cameras, that's what started the whole DSLR shooting videos camera. It shot, you could do manual settings at HD 1080p. And then the T2i came out, and it was the crop sensor plasticky version of that. It was the very first DSLR that you could shoot 1080p HD footage, and it was like $800 or something like that. And then the T3i was the next version of that. But yeah, it was a great. They're amazing cameras. Like if you go on YouTube and type in Canon T2i or T3i cinematic videos, you're going to watch videos and you're going to go, that was filmed on a $800 camera.
And that kind of ties back into the whole, and that's why a lot of people say gear doesn't matter. Because if a person who's not very knowledgeable in these things, and I don't want to say not very knowledgeable, but a person who doesn't understand about the whole gambit on how to create stuff, if you give them a Canon 1D, I mean, they're not gonna. What am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that you
can give someone that doesn't know what they're doing the best equipment, and they still don't know what they're doing.
Right.
So,
to me, that's again, that's like the gap thing. So like, but then that's why you go through the progression. That's why you start with the most basic things and kind of like evolve into, better stuff later on.
Yeah,
And that's sort of
100%.
like, that's the point that I was trying to make through my progression through equipment was, it wasn't, and it's very easy. We talk, a lot of creators talk about this, and a lot of people who are do photography, do anything really. That's the thing, is like, I lost my train of thought for a second. That's the thing, is uh I totally forgot what I was
I
gonna
bet
say.
you're about as prepared for this episode as I am. Well, I'm gonna just go right into what my next thought was. Then, if you can't finish yours,
Go ahead, be my guest, because my brain left. It just jumped out my
so
head and took off.
storytelling is not only a video thing either; it's also a photography thing. You know what I mean? Because you can tell a story through a photo. And the advice I always try to give people is, if you can take a cell phone and take an interesting photo, and this goes for video too. Like, you have to get creative. You see people like getting low shots and high shots, and if you walk around a car show and everyone's about 5'10", 6'2", whatever their height is, but if you just take a photo from your vantage point of standing up, it's not an interesting photo.
Because
I don't
everybody
care,
sees that.
because that's the average view, the average eye height to everyone. So if you see a photo from that eye height, it's not interesting. It doesn't matter if you take it with a cell phone. It doesn't matter if you take it with a $6,000 camera. It's not going to be an interesting photo. So you're going to have to bend down a little bit. Your vantage point needs to be one that is not what the average person sees. And that's why people love drone shots, because they're like, oh my God, that's crazy. Because you can't stand up 200 feet in the air and look down.
Right.
Or, you know what I mean? Like, bend down, get on a knee, stand far back, zoom in. I mean, take your cell phone. Cell phones have zoom lenses now. Go to the next car show, stand back from the car about 50 feet and zoom in on the vehicle and take the shot then. And it's going to change, and it's going to be a way more interesting photo, and it's going to tell more of a story than just walking around taking it from there. So you have to try a lot harder. The gear doesn't make you try. You have to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that means like zooming in on a wheel, zooming in on a steering wheel, parts of the interior, things like that. It's
And actually, just like, I mean, I've done stuff like that before, and this kind of lends to the thing that we're always learning. Like, just recently I started getting into that. You pointed that out. I was doing a lot of like repetitive stuff, like whole vehicle, same aperture, everything kind of in focus. But you're like, what? You gave me the same advice, which was step back, pick something to focus on, open up the aperture so the background's all blown out, and take that photo because it's interesting. And here's a little interesting bit of information. So, most of I mean, everybody develops their own style, and you can kind of tell, like, oh, I think I know who took that photo, and I definitely have my own style. And back when I said in the first episode, when my family had their car lot, what we would do is we would take photos of each car, and then we'd create like this board of all the vehicles that we have. Don't know what the purpose was for back then. That's what we used to do. So my mom would take all the photos with a little disposable camera. And one day I was tasked to do it. And so I did the same thing. I just kind of went like this, snapped a photo, and called it a day. And my mom told me, she's like, look, why don't you get down low and show make sure the whole car is in the picture. And so you can show off like just how the car flows and how everything goes together. So my mom gave me that advice 30 years ago.
moms know best.
Dude, and I still use that to this day. That's how I take photos, because you're right, it's all about perspective. A person who is checking out our show coverage wants to not only see the show, know what the show is going on, but they want to see it from a perspective that, like you said, you wouldn't normally see. And we try to apply that to when we go out and do coverage today. And that also goes back to what you're saying about telling a story, because that's essentially telling a story. Mm-hmm. So, telling a story of just going to a show and snapping a few photos while you're standing up, it doesn't really tell a good story. But if you got low, showed different angles, showed, details in paint, details in wheels, then you start telling a story. And that kind of like ties this conversation together, but loops it around to where, that's another bit of advice. And I know you feel the same way when people ask us, how do you guys create videos? Or what can I do to create good videos? That's it. Start with a
Yeah.
story, a good story. Know before you go to the show, like, think of it like, how can I, if someone who didn't go to this show was to watch my video or look at my photos, how could I take them on the journey with me or re-explain the journey? And that's sort of like what I do. So when I film a show and I sit down with all this raw footage, to myself, I think, how am I going to sit here and retell this story? Like, I know exactly what happened, but now I need to take all of these raw clips and turn it into something that if someone watched my video, they would be been on the same journey with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you take a line of trucks, when you have that line of trucks, you want to isolating the subject is very important. And that becomes to, like, say your steering wheel shot, if you just want to focus on the steering wheel, you need to understand the settings of your camera to where the steering wheel's in focus and what is around it, behind it, in the foreground is not. And that's when you start to learn your lenses. The difference between an f4 lens and an f2.8 lens, or if you do have an f4 lens, you need to stand a little bit farther back to get the background a little bit more blurry. You know what I mean? It's just, that's when you start to learn, like, the details of it. But you have to take the time to learn those. You know what I mean?
Right. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but a lot of people I would say the majority of people who are watching and listening to this podcast right now, we're using terminology. They have no idea what we're talking about. But I think it's important to talk about because it gives a little bit of insight into what we do and why it takes us so long to do what we do.
Yeah. What I would suggest, if you are messaging me or messaging Frank or anyone else, there's so many great photographers and video people in the car scene, and you're looking at those videos and you want to send them a message and say, hey, I want to do what you do. How do I get started? I would start by watching a crap ton of photo YouTube videos, because
Right.
photos or video, however you want to say it, you know what I mean? Like, I watch a lot of, I don't know what, for example, like Frono's Photo or Peter McKinnon, things like that, because then you will start to learn what we're talking about and how to recreate those shots, and how the different settings on your camera create blur and create slow motion and create different color styles, and the difference between a cheaper versus expensive, and what the advantages you can take if you buy a cheaper camera, that you can take advantage of certain things with certain settings and all that stuff. So yeah, it's like I said, just watch a lot of videos.
Right.
Take the time to input, and if you're younger, go to a community college and take a photography class.
Yeah, that's a big thing too.
Or find
Yeah.
a camera. A lot of camera shops offer photography classes, or at least they used to. I don't know if they do anymore, but you could pay X amount of dollars and take a class.
Right. And so you remember in one of our previous conversations when we were talking about brands and, I forget what episode that was, but we were talking about, useful information. And I was saying before, like, when someone comes to me and asks me something about screen printing or running a brand, I try to give them accurate, useful information rather than some generic thing. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit different with photography and videos and what we do because, and it sounds contrived, but honestly, when someone says, well, how can I make a video like you, or how can I do it like you? The best thing, like you said, is go to YouTube and watch videos. And not only watch videos, but like you said, go find your favorite photographer, go find videos that you like and try to deconstruct them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then, so like now when you ask someone a question, and that kind of helps for the person asking the question too. Like, that's some good advice for the person asking the question. So instead of going up to your favorite photographer or videographer and saying, how do I do what you do? Watch a bunch of videos and then go to that person and say, like, hey man, in this one video, the whole background's blown out, it was all blurry, but this was in focus. I don't know how to do that. Can you tell me? And they will tell you exactly how to do it.
Yeah, I remember
Most of them will. Most of them will.
Yeah, exactly. I remember the first time Cody, who started Grinder TV with me, he was doing rolling shots, and then I tried to do some rolling shots, and I was like, "Hey man, why don't my rolling shots look like your rolling shots?" And he goes, "Oh, because you're not manually exposing your video. You left it on auto." And I was like, "Oh." And then so I did that, learned how, and then boom, now my rolling shots look the way I wanted to. Where when me and John O'Neill one time from John O'Neill owns Johnny O Photo and OC Products now in Orange County, but we went out to the Salton Sea to scout some areas for a video shoot, and we were both taking photos. He uploaded his photos, and I was like,
And you're like, what?
mine don't look anything like this. So I actually went over to his house, and he kind of showed me a couple of things, and then once you learn a couple of things, and that's when you start to venture off and make it yours, make it your style. But there is a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things.
Yeah, that's true. Like with everything.
Yeah, and there's just it's an art form. Photos, videos, it's all an art form, and it's all what the artist creates. But there's still a wrong way to do things.
And that's the thing. And that was the other thing is like, people say like, oh well, it's all composition and the artist's eye. It is, but there's also a technical aspect to it too. It's like anything. It's like even to like touch on what this podcast is supposed to be about, which is trucks and stuff, but we're talking about gear. But the same thing goes for trucks. Like building a truck, there's a technical aspect to it. There's things you have to adhere to make it right. You know what I mean?
I can compare it to the whole built not bought thing. Let's say, you're a guy, you kind of know how to weld. You kind of know, you bought a truck and you want to bag it. But you don't know how to do anything. You just know that your buddy's shop can do it, but you've never done it. So you're like, well, I'm going to go buy a welder because my buddy's shop has a welder. It's just like, oh, I'm going to create a video. I'm going to go buy a camera because my buddy that does videos, he has this camera. So now the truck's in your garage with this welder and a couple of tools. You have to learn how to do it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing. A tool is a tool regardless of what the outcome is. You have to learn how to use it and learn how to use it right, because if you do it wrong, the outcome is not what you wanted it to be.
Right. And yeah, definitely. And I think that but also like I would also say to people like, be patient, because it could be overwhelming. And that's why again, to go back to it, why we always say start off with the most basic tools that you have, because you know how to use them.
Yeah.
If again, for that, that example of handing someone a very expensive camera and body and lens and everything like that, that person would become so overwhelmed on how to use it, they would probably just give up.
Well, it's the same. I guess it goes. That comparison I did was it sounded better in my mind than it did when it came out, but it is the same thing when you walk into a shop and they have a bunch of fancy tools and all this stuff. You can do the same thing in your garage. It's going to take you a little bit more time, maybe a little bit more effort, but a welder is a welder when it comes down to it. Yeah, some weld thicker steel and all this stuff, but you can, the outcome can be the same. You have to just get creative and make it that way. And also don't be afraid to not watch truck videos, because in the grand scheme of things, when you get into the car world, the Euro cars and stuff like that, there's some really great content creators out there. And that's
what you're saying is don't be afraid to go outside of truck videos.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Is that what you meant?
Yeah. Yeah, like don't just watch truck videos when you're looking for inspiration or whatever, because when in the automotive world, there's some great content creators that just quote unquote shit on most of us.
Right. You're right.
You know what I mean? But it gives me inspiration watching a lot of that stuff, and then I try to bring that into my videos.
Yeah, definitely. Gather inspiration from anywhere. Not even in the automotive sense, but just anywhere. Like I find myself finding inspiration in the strangest places, but it motivates me, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is, and that kind of, in a previous episode, we talked about where motivation comes from, our individual motivations, and mine comes from all over. I can be watching a podcast with a comedian or anybody talking about something, and if they have enough passion while they're talking about it, I'm like, Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that inspires me to keep on doing what I do, and I've said that before.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point too about patience. And patience, and not everything, not every video you do is going to be. Some videos are going to be a lot better than the others. Some coverage is going to be a lot better than the others.
That happens to me all of the time.
Yeah.
And you know what happens to me a lot is I'll create something, I'll create a video, and I'm going through the process. I get to the end and I watch it and I'm like, well, that's not my best, but I'm just gonna put it out there. So I put it out there. But then when I step away from it for a few days and maybe I'll come back to it and rewatch it, I'm like, oh, no, this isn't that bad. I think we're really hard on ourselves sometimes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And we try to create the best content we can, and when we feel like we fall short, it affects us. But that's the gap. That's that gap again. Like, you're creating something that maybe isn't so good, or maybe you don't think it's so good, but you just keep doing it and you keep creating, because in actual fact, what you're creating that you don't think is so good, someone who is in the beginning stages is like, wow, I want to do that. You know what I mean? So it's all very subjective, and it's all,
Yeah.
it's
It's
all,
also there's another one quick note to this too is don't get caught up on brands. There's so many people out there that are like, oh, if you don't shoot Sony, it ain't nothing. You know what I mean? Or da 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 da. Like Canon glass rules, or in the photography world, when you get into like Leicas and stuff like that, it gets pretty intense and stuff. But don't get caught up on brands, because they all do the same thing. And
right.
if you could put a video side by side, and I guarantee you can't tell what camera that it was shot on.
Yeah.
You know
and
what I mean?
and that kind of like goes back to what we were saying, kind of being a little too hard on ourselves. Sometimes we're so hard on ourselves on stuff that no one notices, and we have to tell ourselves that sometimes.
Yeah.
Like when something is like maybe when I stabilize something and it ends up a little jelly in one corner, and I'm like, it just bugs me to no end. But most of the people who are watching that video are just gonna go like watch and like, oh, that was great, that was awesome.
It all depends. It all depends on you too. Your, like, what are your limits of what you can let slip and what you don't?
That's true.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like warp stabilization is something that people don't know much about. But in an editing program, you can put a filter on there that stabilizes the footage a little bit. And sometimes it doesn't work the best. Sometimes it doesn't work the best, and it gets a little jello-y,
Jello-y, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it just depends. I mean, I let stuff like slide like that all the time. In fact, this mini nats video, I don't know what I was doing with my gimbal. I don't know what setting I had, something's off or something, but it was jittery. It was very, very the footage was not great. And luckily Sony has their own thing called Catalyst now. And what it does is you can browse all your footage in it, and you can stabilize it in the Sony Catalyst. And it
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like the jello effect is because the Premiere doesn't know the metadata behind how it was shot, like the focal lengths and all that stuff. It's just trying to stabilize what you shot. But this Sony one knows the metadata and the frames per second and the focal lengths and all this stuff, and it will take it and it won't jello it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's saving my butt. I'll tell you that, because
That goes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's saving my butt, because if
Yeah.
not that anyone would notice. I could put the footage out and it would be shaky. It would be, a little bit like this, and no one would even care. No one would care. But I would care. And what it happens is it makes me not want to edit the video.
Oh.
It makes me not want to get into the edit, because I'm just like, well, all this footage, and it's like you're seeing it over and over, every clip after clip after clip, and when I don't do it well, it's hard for me to get into it.
Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting perspective from your point. The same thing kind of happens to me. You were talking, so that's the little things. Those are the little things that you learn along the way, and that's why you end up with more expensive gear. My cameras do none of what you're talking about. My cameras, I record with Canon 80Ds, and those are, what are those, 5 years old now? Something like that, maybe more.
Oh, they're more,
Yeah. So like that, but that's the thing. And so now I'm starting to, even with the equipment that I use to produce videos, now I'm finding myself like, okay, I think I want to do this, and I want to make this a little bit better, and that's how you start getting into the better gear and stuff like that. And one thing that I wanted to bring up, a point you were talking about, that happened to you during the mini nat shoot. I recently changed a couple things on how I film, just like hardware aspects. Like I was putting a different lens on my body on the gimbal. I started with a really light lens, a wide lens, because it was kind of using that as a crutch to like take out some shake. But I decided, again, because I was watching my videos and I was becoming unhappy with how they looked, and I wanted them to look a little bit better. I said, well, I need to add a different lens onto it so it can achieve a different look. So from my perspective, that was picking a show, which was the Forbidden Fantasy show, and doing that, going into this thing knowing this all could go very south very quickly. I could get home, look at all this footage, and I could just be like, that's done. Like, I can't use any of this. So it's always, stressful when you are creating and you are making stuff, when you start trying to like venture out and try something new, because in the back of your mind, it's like, well, I need to make this video, especially the shows that we go to when we travel to these shows, and these videos are expected, because that's the truth. Some of these videos are expected. So when you're going into these things and you start getting out of your comfort zone, it's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and try doing it for a job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I've gone to shoots, and luckily I can utilize the shows to kind of push my limits. Like you said, get out of your comfort zone a little bit, push the limits of yourself, and then hopefully it worked, and you get home and you can make a video. But when I do things for, for a client, hoping.
I think that's what you meant by like work, is like when you're dealing with a client who's paid money
Yeah,
for
yeah,
this
yeah.
thing.
When I'm dealing with like a paid client, where it's not like a show, I can go to, and if a certain clips didn't work, I don't need to use them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, that was blurry, don't need to use that clip, or that didn't work, don't need to use that clip. I have other clips I can use. But if you go to if I'm shooting for a client, that's not the case. You know what I mean? Like, I have to make
Stressful.
sure that, yeah, definitely stressful. I've had audio fail because I'm using a different mic setup now, and I've had the audio fail, so I went straight back to my old setup.
Tried and true.
Tried and true.
No, for sure.
You know what I mean? Because it just gets, it gets nerve wracking and stuff. But that kind of flows into another interesting topic or question that I think we get asked quite a bit, and I don't want to say that it's annoying, because it's not annoying, but it definitely like kind of kicks us in the butt sometimes, is when people say, "Hey, when is X video coming out?"
Oh yeah. Yes. You just hit me. You just hit me.
It is. I've had comments on YouTube, and it's just like, I'll upload a video, and the comment will be, "Cool, when's this video coming out?" Or,
Yeah.
"That's a cool reunion show. When's Mini Nats coming out? When's this coming out?" And I'm just like, I don't want to be mean, and I don't want to be, because you lose translation over text and comments.
Right.
And things,
For sure.
But basically, I want to say, well, when you see it drop on YouTube, that's when it comes out. There is no schedule.
Yeah. I get the same thing. Yeah. Especially like when you're coming back from a show, a long trip, and you're burnt, and you need to come home and just decompress a little bit, and then you get ding. They're like, "Oh man, the show was awesome. When's the video gonna drop?" And it's all like, I literally just walked in my house, and it's a long process.
Or it's someone that asked you that question and you didn't actually film their truck.
Oh, that's a rough one.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
That's always a rough one. And again, you don't want to be mean, and you don't want to like say anything rude or anything like that. So we just kind of take all those comments in stride and just kind of roll with them.
Yeah.
But what we do, it takes a lot of effort, and I think in today's world where media is consumed so quickly, like, it's actually not their fault. So the person asking these questions, it's not their fault. They're just used to media coming so quickly and consuming media so fast that it's almost kind of expected. Like, it's not, or not, maybe not expected, but it's not, to them, it's not an outrageous question.
No, it's just a natural thing.
It's just a natural thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's where we're at right now, is media consumption is just so fast. I mean, you could scroll through TikTok and consume, like, a creator that makes a TikTok whether they spend 5 minutes making it or an hour making it, they're still spending time making it. But let's take the guy who maybe spent an hour making a TikTok. You watched it in 30 seconds and you're gone.
Yeah,
You know
but
what I mean?
it's a little bit different because
Yeah.
because the viewer doesn't know when it was filmed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So like everyone knows that Mini Nats was on a certain date, and neither of us have dropped our Mini Nats video yet.
No, and we're still working on them.
Still working on them, yeah. So as far as from my point of view, when it comes to that stuff, I've tried, and there are some videos that I will bump other things to get them done. LST,
Yeah.
Dino's Get Down. I don't rush them, but I just will. They are more of a priority than certain things, and usually Mini Nats is too. But it's just been so busy. But you have to remember. So let's put this into perspective. We leave for a show. We leave for Mini Nats. You leave on Tuesday. We leave Wednesday. You don't get it until the following Tuesday. Mm-hmm. You can't just get home and jump into it. There was a show the following weekend after Mini Nats. There was shows all throughout May. So it doesn't take. It takes hours and days to edit these videos. And for me personally, at least, I'm not a fast editor. You know, I'm not fast at all. I can be, but it only when I find the right groove. You know, other than that, it takes me a lot of time. But it also, I've done not tests, I want to say, clinical trials. But
Clinical trials of video editing.
but I've dropped videos a week after the event, a big event like Battle in Bama. And then the following year, I took 5 weeks to do it. They got the same amount of views.
Right.
It's not that these things are going to get more views if you drop them directly after the show. Mm-hmm. They will eventually get dropped, and that's kind of where I'm taking that. Is just have some patience. You know, it's and another point is June and July aren't that busy, so we have to spread these. We have to spread them out. Mm-hmm. We can't just drop them one here, 1 week here, 1 week here, because then we don't have anything for 2 or 3 months.
Right. Yeah, and that's the same boat that I'm in. I'm not a fast editor either, and it takes a long time to like I said, to take all this raw footage, decide how you're going to retell this story, find the proper music to tell this story, put these clips together. You know, there's so much work that goes involved, and it's literal hours, like you said. It's hours and hours and hours of work.
Yeah.
On top of also, you know, because at the same time as we are, you know, making videos and stuff like that, but you have client work for your photography and videos. I have client work for my screen printing company. We're trying to run our brands. We're coming out with our new giveaways, and there's just so. And I'm not saying any of this like as an excuse or like some sort of pity party or anything. This is just factual things that happen.
Yeah.
You know, and the steps that we go through. So yes, it takes a long time to produce these videos.
Yeah.
You know, but I gotta.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying I gotta hand it to our viewers and our followers and our fans. They're actually very patient with us, you know, and they're
they don't have
majority of them.
They don't have a choice.
That's kind of true. That's kind of true.
At least with me, I've come to the point where, you know, I get people asking a lot, and I'm just like, look, when it comes out is when it comes out,
right?
And unless it's a paid gig, then that will take precedence.
Right. So we have, you know, usually we would kind of maybe, because we're 45 minutes or so into this, and usually we would start going into questions and stuff like that. But actually, an anonymous viewer, it's Angie, had a really good question that we should talk about in the pod. And she asks, do we have like a favorite video or photo that we refer back to that kind of like, you know, maybe it's not our best video, maybe it's not, you know, the best video that gets the most views, but it's just something that we can rewatch or look at that kind of like, that makes us happy, basically. Do you have one?
I don't know if my Australia, New Zealand stuff, there was a short recap video where I just kind of threw it together of one of my trips to Australia, and then it transitions to me being on the plane and then landing in New Zealand, and it's got some New Zealand footage. I love that one. I like the song. It makes me feel good seeing the people in it. It brings back some good memories. And I think that's just a personal thing more than a
technical thing.
Or more than a thing like an artist thing. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't the greatest that, but it made me personally feel good. And then as far as photography goes, there's a couple. I'm trying to think. I'm looking at Ronnie's right now from the Salt Flats when we went up there and shot
That
it
was a
with
cool one.
Salt Flats. Yeah, that was a cool one.
And you also did like that's the thing in your world, not world, but from your perspective, like you shot so many covers and done so many, features and magazines and stuff like that. Like you have a lot to look back on, and that some of them are absolutely amazing. And speaking about Ronnie, the one where you shot his camper truck out in the woods, and you had
Yeah.
the fire set up like
Yeah.
that's great. I love
Yeah,
that one.
I think it's more with me. It's probably the memories of not the actual quality, maybe of the photo or the video, but the memories around making it. You
Yeah,
know?
and I'm the same, and I'm the same way. If I was to pick mine, it's interesting that you picked, or not picked, but you were talking about that video that you really like and makes you happy, because the videos that make me happy have very little trucks in them. They're the ones that, because for a few years before, the pandemic popped off and everything, I would make like a yearly video of the club, and we'd have our Christmas party, and I'd throw the video out there, everybody would watch it, and sort of like the previous year or so of stuff that we did together as a club. Those are my favorite videos.
Well,
Just watching them.
the one that you did, I think just the one you always share with the club. The reason I don't know what it is. It's
Oh
the
yeah,
it's
yeah,
the club.
yeah. I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, that's my all-time favorite video.
Oh,
Like
thanks.
of almost my videos and yours combined, because I'm the same. I'm like that. I like people and experiences and all that stuff, and then you add the music to it. So that was cool, just because it probably a little biased because it's a lot of my friends in my club.
Well,
but,
yeah,
you
it's
know.
our club and stuff like that. But no, and that kind of translates into another thing about creating videos, and especially, and only from my perspective, making videos, but I'm sure it's the same thing with you. So there are videos. I mean, we post so many videos, so obviously we're not going to have good videos, right? There are some videos that you can tell, and you pointed this out to me. You're like, I uploaded a video, and you said you really weren't into that video, were you? And I was like, yeah, you're right, because that's why you can tell. So like sometimes when you're making a video, or you're at a show and you're having a ton of fun and everything's going great, you're there with your friends and your club and the show's going great, that translates into the video. You can feel the vibe.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, like I've had videos where almost not necessarily going through the motions, but putting it together kind of like, I don't want to say going through the motions, and I don't want to say half-heartedly, because I do put effort into every single video I make. But the end result, you're like, you can tell that something was missing.
Yeah, and I think, and here's the thing though: is when you're at the event, it might not be the event itself. It just could be something you're going through personally. It could be something. It just could be a bad trip, like something broke down, or it could be anything. It could be whatever it is, and you're just not into it that weekend. You don't have to make a video, but with us, we kind of have to make a video.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like but also those make interesting videos too. Like if you have a problem, out on the road and stuff like that, like sometimes that adds to the video. That's happened to us plenty of times before.
Yeah, especially with your videos where you're telling this more of a story by talking about it. Mine was always telling a story just by showing it, and then I have to pick the music to go with it type thing. And so, until more recently when I do talk a little bit more, but yeah, that's all part of the story. It's part of the journey. It's part of everything.
Yeah. And to kind of like recap the whole thing, and, we talk about the story, and we both get this from the same source, and that's Casey Neistat. We've talked about him before, but that's, if you were to go up to Casey and you were to say, how can I make a good video like you? And the first thing he'll say is story. Story is king. If you can tell a good story, you will have a good video.
Yeah. Yep. It's definitely the gist of it. And I, like I said before, it translates to photos too. Tell a story through photos. Tell a story through the angles, make the effort to do it.
Yeah.
And also make the effort to learn. Make the effort to ask the questions, find someone that's receptive to answering the questions, because some people just don't want to engage in that. And then also just
some people are like that.
yeah. And then just also spend a lot of time on YouTube learning. And again, I always tell people, if you want to get into photography, because photography and videos, the settings on the cameras, they're almost identical. At least these cameras that we use.
Right.
You know what I mean? Go to your local community college and take a course. Because once you know the basic settings, then it's gonna if you never learn those basic settings, you're never
going to achieve what you want to do.
No, not at all. Not at all. But yeah, I think that's when it comes to gear.
I think that's gear in a nutshell, or gear
Gear
in
in a nutshell.
or gear in a podcast episode. I hope everybody, at least some people, found it interesting. I know some people are gonna be like, "Where's the truck stuff?" Well,
This is the truck stuff, and this is this podcast is not just about trucks.
right.
This is about us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And this is what we do. So
Yeah, absolutely.
we're going to talk about whatever we want.
Yeah, hey, we'll talk about anything. It's our
Not everything.
podcast.
It's our podcast.
We can do what we want.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so what do you have going on?
so as far as like show stuff, you said that, like you said, these are the slow months. June, July, things are slowing down, stuff like that. I did want to talk about a couple things that I found out about that I'll be going to is, and I forget the dates, maybe I should have wrote them down, but I know for sure in June and July. In June, we have the SEMTC one-day show going down. Like I said, I don't have too much information on that, but that's going down in June. And then in July is the Dockweiler Cruise. And that's thrown by Mini Truck Revival, Victor from Mini Truck Revival. He puts that whole thing together. That guy, he puts on three different events per year, which is the the Neptune's Net Cruise, the Dockweiler Show, and the end of year meetup. So there's 3 events that he puts on, and I think I just called it the wrong thing. So the event that's coming up in July is the Neptune's Net Cruise, and it's awesome. We meet up in Santa Monica, somewhere I don't know where everybody meets up, but we meet up in Santa Monica, and then we cruise up the coast, up the PCH. Is that the one?
For all this, you don't really have a lot of details on this stuff.
I know. I should have wrote it down, but I just want to talk about the show in general. I will have more details because the show's not until July, so I will have more details in the next episode. But I just wanted to bring up the event just to put it out there because I feel like I forgot to mention it a couple times. So yes, the Neptune's Net Cruise. It's really cool. We meet up in Santa Monica. We cruise up PCH up to Neptune's Net, the restaurant, which is very famous. That's the one that was featured in the Fast and the Furious, I think in like the first one or something like that. Yeah. We cruise up there. Everybody meets up back up at the restaurant. We eat, we hang out, and then we get back on PCH and we go up just a little bit further. And there's this like turnout with this giant rock. And I forget the name of what it is, but it's just like this turnout right off the side of the road. So everybody gets there. We park, we hang out for a couple hours. It's a really cool event. But I will have more details on that in the next episode as far as date, time, where, all that great stuff. And like I said,
I was going to say that's the nice part about California is like versus where I'm at. We're shut down. You know what I mean? The heat, it basically shuts everything down. There's a couple things here and there. And I even think there's an indoor show at some point, but I think it's a lowrider show. But we're essentially done.
That's the thing. Is there a lot of like cruise nights in the Phoenix area since like those are at night and stuff like that? So
no, because it's still too hot at night.
Oh really? Oh
yeah. There's this fireworks show that Art and Noise puts on.
Oh, that's right, July 4th.
At the softball fields, which is really cool. It's a show right on the softball fields, and they launch the fireworks from the fields there.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's a cool one, but it's still 105 degrees, 110 degrees at 8:30. So it's not like California or the West Coast where once the sun goes down, the temperature goes down. That doesn't happen here.
No, that's a bummer. But there's a lot of stuff going on here. We got those events coming up. We got the Southern California Mini Truck Show going down. There's cruise nights. Pretty much, for sure, there's 2 cruise nights a month in our area. One from Sunset, one from Seductive. But there's always something going on. So I will try to be more prepared next time with dates and everything like that. Because I really would like, more people to hit up these events. Vic's events in particular are actually a little bit different. I won't go into great detail about it, but they're not like I would say traditional truck shows like we're used to.
Yeah,
It's like a different scene.
It is, and it's super interesting to me. And the Dockweiler thing is something that is actually a goal of mine when I get my mini truck is to go to that.
That's awesome.
I want to go to it, but it's like I want to actually go with my truck to that one.
That's awesome.
We're going to start having guests on soon.
We need to have guests.
And Victor will be one of those guests.
Yeah, we know so many great people and so many interesting people that we need to start, maybe a lot of people who listen to our podcast, really, they've heard of these people, but maybe they don't know too much about them, but yeah, definitely want to get guys like
Victor.
Victor.
Victor, Mini Truck Revival, like if you see that, you don't want to see the person behind that, you know what I mean? And like you said, it's not the traditional mini truck stuff that a lot of people are used to. It's a little different. So
it's a little different, but it's cool that now, there's a lot more people, from, I guess there are different scenes, so I guess I can use that. Like there's a lot of people from our scene starting to go to Dockweiler, starting to see a lot of different trucks out there, which is cool for Vic. It's really cool for him because his event is growing and getting this new mix of people, and everybody's kind of like introducing stuff to each other,
Yeah.
Like when I took the Forerunner to a Neptune's Net one year, go out there, we park off the highway, sitting there chopping it up with people, and a guy comes up to me, he's looking at the truck, and he's like, man, this thing is so cool. And I'm like, man, thank you so much. And he goes, we never get wild builds like this out at these events. And I thought, and it kind of stuck with me. I'm all, wild? That truck is not wild at all. It's basically a stock Forerunner bagged, but what my point is like that's the meshing of these two scenes, And then from our perspective, I see these awesome trucks, mostly static dropped, and it reminds me of like how we used to do stuff a long time ago. So it's really cool. It's this really awesome mix of all of these different, people and scenes and trucks and everything like that. So
yeah, I don't know if you've been writing down a guest list but
I should.
Mini Trucker, you should write more things down.
I know. That was our conversation yesterday. I need to become more organized.
It's just because I forget things, as far as like I would just be sitting there and I'd be, oh, that'd be a good guess. So I have to write it down or else I'm just going to forget.
Yeah.
I want to get Carlos on here, Cali Boy.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of history between me and him.
Yeah, definitely. So I bet you, I'm sorry I don't cut you off, but I bet you a very small amount of people watching this have no idea how close Carlos and Cali Boy is to like the mini truck scene. I mean, he's a big lowrider guy. He's huge in the lowrider scene, but no one knows how close he is to the mini truck scene. That's a good one.
Yeah, he was. I don't want to say is or was because you know what I mean. He was a part of Forbidden Fantasy for a long time. Right. Mm-hmm. He was in a low life video, and I don't actually think that his feature ever got released, but we filmed it for low life video.
Oh, really? One of his rides?
Yeah, his old Corolla, his green Corolla.
Oh, cool.
And I don't know that ever actually got released by Mike or not. But anyways, him, and then I want to bring Dave Prater on.
Yeah,
from our club because he's got some history in the mini truck scene that not a lot of people know about. I like to bring the people that kind of like they're like Dave Prater. You might not know who
I would
he
say
is or,
not a lot of people know who Dave is.
No, but I guarantee you know the trucks that he's built.
Yep. 100%.
Or
and they would be surprised. So. They'd be surprised, like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I don't know if you have any ideas or whatever.
Yeah, I have a few. Like definitely the ones that we're talking about, and then again, like people who are in the scene and people may know them, but they don't understand exactly how talented they are. I said in the last episode I want to get Jaime Silva on here to talk about wheels. The guy's knowledge on wheels is exponential,
Yeah.
And so so definitely definitely going to get a list together, figure out the technical aspect of it, which kind of ties this whole conversation together about gear and progressing and wanting to be better at what we do. And that's one thing that we have to figure out is the technical aspect of how to bring on a guest.
Yeah. So if you want to be a guest on the drop with Frank and Brian, you have to go spend a minimum of $500 on gear.
I I didn't know where
You're
you're
gonna
going with
need
that one.
a fancy arm, like
Which
if you're
I don't
watching this
have.
you're watching this on YouTube. You can't be a podcaster without this arm thing.
I'm half of the podcast right now. I got a new mic. My arm is sitting at the post office right now.
But are you even a YouTuber if you don't wear over-the-ear headphones?
I know. Funny enough, I put my like editing headphones on, but I couldn't hear anything. So I was like, I don't know. I may end up screaming through the whole podcast.
Oh, that's because you have sound canceling,
I do, yeah.
noise canceling. Those are not podcast headphones.
And
Nor are those editing headphones.
okay.
Those are just headphones.
I like them.
If we're gonna get technical,
Yeah.
I
Right
don't-
on.
anyways. But yeah. What else is What should we talk about next time?
I don't know. We kind of flew into this one a little.
This one
we
was
didn't-
This one was very unprepared.
It was, but I think it was good. I think people are going to enjoy it. I think people who wanna get into what we do will enjoy it because they'll maybe find some insight into this whole thing. People who aren't really interested in doing that but watch our videos might find some, introspect into like how we produce these things.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good one. I think people will enjoy it. But
Oh no, I think they will too. And like I said, it was more just unprepared for me. I'm usually pretty like an hour beforehand, but I just kind of walked in. You're like, hey, I'm ready, and I was still setting up my camera, and
I was just excited for the new mic. And then I figured out how to get everything on my computer screen. So I was just very excited.
it's the little things in life.
It is the little things in life. But cool. Right on, man.
All right.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.
See ya.
Oh, so do we got a record scratch? Wait, there's more.
Wait, there's more. Our giveaway.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I think
So-
we talked about it last week, but let's go into more detail about it now.
So we did talk about it last week, but will you have your website updated by the
Yes.
time this is released on Monday?
Yes.
Okay, so we
It
can
will
definitely. Okay, so basically, we are giving away a legacy ragtop, and it's up to $500, which covers most sizes. It excludes the VW Bus and Beetles ragtops, but yeah,
That's awesome.
That's our giveaway, and I think we're shooting for like a July 15th drawing.
Yeah, big thank you to first of all to Legacy Ragtops for getting on board with us. It's awesome. Thank you for you guys. Let me re-say that. Thank you to you guys for participating in all of these giveaways by going to our websites, purchasing merch. We really appreciate it. This one's an exciting one, and I think people can tell as we go on. These giveaways are getting better and better.
Yeah,
so-
that's going to be a problem.
I know. What are we going to give away in a year?
A truck?
The Forerunner?
I said better and better.
Yeah, he's right. He's right.
We just give away some rusty mini truck. Like, look, guys, we're giving away a truck. No one buys anything off the websites.
That's okay.
Yeah, and then once we get a little bit more caught up with things, then we definitely have to go into some merch.
Yeah, we'll do some limited edition merch. We talked about that last episode. But we should also explain how to enter, right?
Yeah. So every $5 you spend on either of our websites gets you entered.
Which is livelifecustom.com or grinder-tv.com.
Yes. Either of those two websites. So if you buy a shirt, that's $25. It's 5 entries, so on and so forth. And we appreciate all the support.
We do. Right on. So is that it? Can we sign off?
We can sign off.
Okay. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.